Hi, I'm Danny.
And I'm Carlos, and welcome to Spirit Gathering. Today we continue our 21 episode series on Mindfulness Dialogue. In this series, we are delving deeply into the theory and practice of Mindfulness Dialogue, a method that we use and teach here in this channel, and that we believe is critical to our global efforts to become a we. Today we focus on the skill we are calling being present. Come join us.
Spirit Gathering is a YouTube channel dedicated to the radical proposition of creating a new global we. We believe that millions of us around the world are yearning to help find and create ways to realize our interconnectedness. This channel is dedicated to doing just that. Today, we continue our 21 episode exploration of Mindfulness Dialogue that we will produce and publish over the coming year. The series is divided into the three segments of Mindfulness Dialogue: connecting, exploring, and discovering. We are dedicating a full 7 episodes to these segments to provide a solid foundation for this work. In the future, these episodes will become a resource to folks who are bringing this method to their local setting.
Today we continue with connecting. Our theme for today is being present. This, along with making space, are critical first steps in creating a new global we. Please stick around to the end of this episode, where we will bring you our regular bonus segments where we feature examples of our emerging new global we sent in by viewers like you. Let's begin.
Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Learn how to listen as things speak for themselves. Matsuo Basho is the master of the haiku, who lived in Japan in the 17th century. This little haiku says so much to me. Learn how to listen as things speak for themselves. One thing is that there is always so much more going on in any moment than we realize. Another is that we can learn how to listen so that things can speak to and through us, as it were. This kind of listening requires real presence, the capacity to make room for another person or thing to speak itself. Mostly, we don't make this kind of space, but instead project our own meaning or interpretation onto whatever we meet or encounter. We spoke about making space in the last episode, space to hear the world speaking, as Mary Oliver put it, hearing the beast inside me and everything else shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted, that everything is what she calls a prayer, heard and answered lavishly. Imagine being present to another like this. Hafiz, an earlier poet from 14th century Iran, expanded the idea even further. He said, everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him? Isn't this amazing? I mean, however you understand or deny God, Hafiz is saying everything and everyone is a unique expression of life that we should pay attention to. Why not be polite, he says. I might add, why not be sensible, or simply why not be aware and listen? This is part of becoming, or more accurately, realizing that we are already a we. But to become a true we, to connect like this, we have to first learn to connect with ourselves. For it is in the deepest part of ourselves that we find each other. All of this is about being present.
The Zen how-to of being present is simple. Chop wood, carry water. Do what you're doing, in other words. Contrary to popular belief, human beings cannot multitask. What we are capable of is handling a number of serial tasks in rapid succession, or mixing automatic tasks with those that are not automatic. That's one of the reasons reports show that texting while you're driving is extremely dangerous. You just can't effectively attend to two things at once, even the superficially automatic ones. So, how do we stay present? The first thing to recognize is, if indeed we really can do only one thing at a time, we ought to do that one thing wholeheartedly. However, most of our time is spent either in the past or the future rather than the present moment. So, what we end up doing, in fact, is passing through each moment on the way to somewhere else, and in so doing, actually miss that very moment. That's how life ends up passing us by. But the fact is, we do this passing to ourselves. Revisiting the past, and that's all we're doing, can be problematic because it's something that can't be changed. It's done, immutable, immovable. Certainly we can change our relationship to the past, but staying there is simply ruminative, and for some of us, quite destructive.
Anticipating the future is also problematic, even futile, because no matter how much we'd like to convince ourselves otherwise, we can't really control the direction in which things will go. We can set an intention, true, but in the end, the universe has a way of deciding. The following poem by Ruth Bidgood, a wonderful Welsh poet, is a reflection on how not to get stuck in the past. These are the words of an elder looking back, which is understandable, but wanting to stay in the present. It's called Roads. No need to wonder what heron-haunted lake lay in the other valley, or regret the songs in the forest I chose not to traverse. No need to ask where other roads might have led, since they led elsewhere. For nowhere but this here and now is my true destination. The river is gentle in the soft evening, and all the steps of my life have brought me home.
Now I can speak for myself, though I doubt I'm alone in falling into the energy-consuming trap that Bidgood describes, wondering about what might have been, about that heron-haunted lake that lay in the other valley. I realize in my own case that it's partly due to getting older and looking back and wondering if things could have been different. The wondering, of course, easily turns into regret about things I chose not to do, for whatever reason. But I love her logic about the futility of asking where other roads might have led, since clearly they didn't lead here. Here and now, in fact, she concludes, is my true destination. There's even the suggestion, perhaps, that something or someone was directing my path. Whenever I consider the wonders of string theory and infinite possibilities, I find myself leaning towards seeing life as participating in something more than my awkward efforts would suggest. I love how Bidgood captures the image of an older person looking back in the soft evening of life when the flow of things, the river, has slowed down and made space for the contemplative moments of this stage. In this place, with this real presence, comes the realization that all the steps of my life have brought me home.
A final thought that comes out of my Catholic background is the concept of what is called the Blessed Sacrament, the bread of the Eucharist, that symbolized what we call the real presence of God with us. When we were children, we were instructed to make the sign of the cross, bless ourselves, when we passed a church where the Blessed Sacrament was kept, with a lamp always burning before it to symbolize the presence of God always and everywhere. The challenge for us today is to realize the presence of what some call God and others the real world or the essential, in every single thing. But that only happens when we learn to be present ourselves. Being present then means simply being here, right now, in this moment, in this place with this person. In our fractured world, at a time of what is described as cultural shift, the polarization of people at every level, we really need to practice being present if we are to experience the real world again and learn how to live in it. So let's get a sense of mindfulness dialogue. Carlos and I are going to model that process that you can, try out yourselves, just to show you how natural it is. It is simple, though I do believe it is profound. So Carlos, tell us a little bit about the mindfulness dialogue process, and then we'll, as I said, model it for others.
We've described mindfulness dialogue as deeper and more skillful interaction with others, certainly also with yourself and the world we share. We've also suggested that we need deeper interaction more than anything else today in order to address our present challenges and learn to live more creatively in our increasingly complex world. The 3 stages of a mindfulness dialogue process are connecting, exploring, and discovering. In time, you'll get used to the process without thinking, but here we want to stay a little more deliberate.
So first we'll connect through a mindfulness exercise and a little sharing from the deeper place that this mindfulness exercise creates. So let me invite you to find a comfortable position where you can be quiet. Be relaxed, but alert, with your hands on your lap, your back straight against the chair, and your eyes closed, if you like, or your gaze softened, and take 3 deep breaths. Breath, along with change, is the only constant, and being present starts with the breath. So simply draw a deep breath through your nose, releasing it through your mouth. A slow release of breath draws a relaxation response from our bodies, because on the out breath, nothing happens. Everything falls away for that simple span of time, a breath. Let me mind the time for you for a few moments as you get used to breathing in and breathing out deliberately. Find a gentle rhythm if you can. Now notice, what are you doing right now? Not being present is certainly easy. There are bills to pay and kids to pick up at school, doctor's appointments and reports to write, books to read, parents to resent, loved ones to miss. The list goes on and on. With all that going on, past and future, it's no wonder that presence is so elusive. It is not, however, as elusive as you might believe. All you have to do is notice these thoughts, but this time, simply let them go, the way you let go of your breath. So try that for a few moments. Notice your thoughts and let them go. Now, be aware of what you are doing, exactly what you are doing right now. Sitting, feeling, breathing. Bear witness to this. In other words, observe it, name it, in a sense, and stand away from it, all at the same time. This is the present moment. Now. 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 It's only when we cling to a now rather than simply bearing witness to it in that way and letting it pass that we become trapped in time. So try this for a few moments, as again, I'll hold the time for you. Notice what you're doing exactly. Observe it, name it even, and stand away from it all at the same time. When your thoughts begin to intrude, as they will, or as you drift off, simply come back to your breath. The constancy of breath can create the constancy of presence for us. And finally, when you're ready, come back to your body and to where you are. And if your eyes were closed, gently open them. And for a moment or two, notice this sense of being present. Perhaps a sense of calm, maybe a heightened awareness. Oh, that wasn't too bad.
Thank you, Danny. So, what did that feel like? Still a little strange? Or maybe you're getting used to it. So what did you experience? What moved you? We will share some of the thoughts and emotions that moved through us, just to show you how normal and easy this can be. Danny, what was going on for you?
Well, I think the first thing that always comes to me is the wonder of presence and how accessible it actually is, despite the distracted world that we talk about and live in. As soon as I start to breathe, it's like a different kind of presence. And I never cease to be amazed by it. Breathing in and breathing out is such a gift. So I keep returning to that. And there's nothing simpler. That's the first thing that comes to me every time. What about you?
On a similar vein, I never cease to be amazed at how distracted I am when I first start. So, with these YouTube channel things, there's all these technical difficulties that preceded our recording, and we sit down for these for this video, and there's a siren that's going on outside, and every single time that we try to start a dialogue, I notice how distracted I am in a way that I wasn't aware of before. All the sounds and all the commotion and all the internal dialogue in my head, and I'm just amazed at how much junk there is in my mind. Yeah. And it's great to just take the space, make the space, and let it go, and to relax and to be present here now.
Yeah, as you spoke, I found myself again noticing that the sounds that were there was a siren, there's a sound in my room as someone else passes, but the trick, so to speak, is actually noticing it, observing it, naming it, and letting it go all at once. And that it is possible to do that. It sounds kind of complicated, but in fact it's extremely simple and allows me to be present in a different way. Often I think I'm present, but all this stuff is constantly intruding. And until I just do that, bear witness to it in the sense of notice, name, and let go all at once. So I'm kind of getting that, a little bit of a feel for that. So anything else that kind of comes up because this for me is already, I feel more connected to you across Zoom, because like you, I was a bit distracted settling in to make the recording, but now I feel like I'm talking to you and I'm present to you in a different way.
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind is just really the constant realization of how all this gets in the way of our being present to each other in dialogue. If we don't go through this process of connecting to ourselves, how can we connect to each other? That's just the obvious.
And one last thought comes to me as you say that too. Like you have been present at so many meetings. Present, that's the word, but not really present. There's so much more going on inside of myself, and I never really show up. And I think it's often the same in conversations. We don't do what we've just done there, a simple little process of helping ourselves to be present to this moment, to ourselves, in order to be able to connect with another person or another thing. So hopefully we're a little bit more connected now. So now that we have managed to deepen our presence and our connection to each other and to this moment, let's move on to the second stage of mindfulness dialogue that we're calling exploring. And we're going to explore, our theme today is exploring being present, why it's important, how we can do it, and so on. And to help us with this stage of our mindfulness dialogue, we will use the poem that I shared earlier by Ruth Bidgood as what we're calling a catalyst that will inspire and direct us, focus our attention. So let's listen again to that poem, and then Carlos and I would explore what it says about being present. So Carlos.
No need to wonder what heron-haunted lake lay in the other valley, or regret the songs in the forest I chose not to traverse. No need to ask where other roads might have led, since they led elsewhere. For nowhere but this here and now is my true destination. The river is gentle in the soft evening, and all the steps of my life have brought me home. So perhaps a word or a phrase caught your attention this time. Let's see what came up for Danny and myself and where it takes us. Danny.
Well, I couldn't help but being grabbed by the last two lines. The river is gentle in the soft evening, and all the steps of my life have brought me home. The words so resonated. I think what they said to me is, the river is gentle in the soft evening of my life. This is the soft evening of my life, older. And it does change so many things. You find the way you look at life and the way you're looking back. But that last line was so encouraging. All the steps of my life not only have brought me here, but have brought me home. That was I find that extremely powerful and comforting in a wonderful way.
So for me, where the poem took me this time, some people might know on the channel now that I'm a physician and I work in the emergency room, and for the longest time I found myself resentful at being called at 3 o'clock in the morning to see someone who probably had no business being in the emergency room to begin with. But I found myself just resentful. Why am I here? Why am I being called to this, to be with this person who doesn't need to be here in the first place? And it would just really tear my insides, because it was such an exhausting evening of over and over and over being called to be at the bedside of someone who supposedly needed my help and most of the time didn't really. Anyway, I found myself in that cycle for a while and just resenting being in that place, being there. And it took me, I think, years to really come to the place where I needed to decide, would I be present to this person, whoever they were, for whatever reason they came to me, legitimate or not, it didn't matter. It was my destiny to be there with this person at this hour. And everything changed when I made that switch in my head. I decided to be present every single time, no matter how in the beginning I was sort of distracted by my own wonderings about the Heron Haunted Lake and why on earth was I in the emergency room and not in a beautiful lake somewhere else. Being present made all the difference. It just changed my interaction with the patient. It changed my attitude towards my job, what I was doing there, and how it could be helpful. It was amazing.
I was taken by the way you phrased that. Once I decided to be present, that really being present has a lot to do with intention and making a decision. Otherwise, kind of life lives us. That's what it feels like. It feels like there's so many things going on, and I'm pulled here and there into the past and into the future, that, as we were saying earlier, life passes us by, but it's like we're doing it. We're allowing life to pass us by because we're not making the decision to be present. So that's the piece that kind of come up for me more strongly than I'd noticed before, that it really is a decision to be present. And it takes practice, because there is so much that's distracting all the time. So if we are to become if I'm to connect with you or with another or with this moment right now, I'm going to have to practice. It's not just a question of, oh yeah, we are a we. It's the rhetoric is easy, but clearly the world that we have created, that we sort of kind of implied a little bit earlier, is so full these days and so distracting and so polarizing. We get caught up in our own little worlds, and I know I'm overstating it perhaps a little bit, but that piece of making a decision, it's a clear intention, being present.
Yes, Danny, and you're reminding me or highlighting for me how it is a constant decision. It's not like I made a decision years ago to be present to my patients and it becomes easier every time. In some ways it does, but in many ways it's an ongoing decision. I have to make the decision every single time, because something else will be distracting me, something else will be in my heart, in my mind, and I have to decide every single time, am I going to be present to this person in front of me today, tonight, this moment, or not? It is a constant choice. So that's a good reminder.
So, I mean, there's a little taste of exploring that you and I, Carlos, have done. Clearly, we could go on. I can feel lots and lots of thoughts coming up for me. And a good conversation is like that. And using the poem the way we did as a catalyst, in a sense, allows us to approach the theme, in this case being present, somewhat indirectly, but maybe it kind of brings us to a deeper place because of that. So let's see if we can move on to the third stage of mindfulness dialogue that we're calling discovering. Connecting, exploring, which we've just done, and now discovering. And what's implied here is discovering what insights may have been generated through this exploration process. For the fact is that when we share, explore like this without judgment or insistence, but simply really trying to understand each other, I think something happens, a kind of maybe awakening. The reason is that when we don't have to defend our positions, but can simply share them, this loosens our tendency to insist on our opinions or to refute or deny the perspective of another. In that space, something happens, something new is generated, a small shift, a little insight, and often what is generated is also shared. So what we do here in this discovering stage is simply listen for this new spark of life and give voice to it. In this way, we might be able to build something new together. So let's see what has begun to emerge out of our mindfulness dialogue. So we'll take a moment and take a breath and begin to listen for. And maybe when you're ready, Carlos, anything that has started to come up for you around being present, a little bit of a shift, a little bit of an awakening.
Yeah, so for me, thinking about this channel, Spirit Gathering, and in the context of the topic of today, which is being present, and what are the implications of being present to this channel? It suggests that we're asking our audience, if we're going to become a we, if we're going to become present to each other, we have to make sort of choices. There's going to be so many things that distract us from doing this work, from coming together across vast differences, across, all of our divides. For us to really be successful in a project like we're trying to create, a new global we, it requires that all of us choose to be present to each other. That means taking the time, making the effort, showing up. It means letting others know to be present, to come together. I mean, there's so many implications to this theme of being present. It doesn't just happen. Being together, being with each other, being intentional like this is not an accident.
As you were speaking, Carlos, too, I was reminded in my earlier life, I was a priest in Africa, and I was forced to be present in a different way, in a more deliberate way, because I didn't speak their language. I had to learn the tribal language, even to have simple communication. And it's strange how much we take for granted and project onto what others are saying. But when you have to learn the language and you're like a child again and stumble through it. I remember in the early stages of learning the language, I would go and practice. There was a nearby hospital, and I would go in and speak to people, patients there, and I would start my first few words and they would say something in return, and of course I didn't know what they were saying, and they would break into laughter and to roll around the floor at this crazy Irishman trying to speak in their language. But it highlighted for me the work that's needed, just as you're saying, in order to be present. It's not just I'm present and all I got to do is close my eyes or whatever. It's work, and especially in a distracting world like the world that we all live in these days. So that's what's coming up for me.
Your image of the laughter in this amazing vignette that you shared about trying to connect across languages. I mean, that's amazing. Somehow you were able to be present with each other and in this joyful way. It makes me wonder what craziness we're doing here in this channel. How crazy is this? And can it be joyful? Can it be something that it probably needs to be joyful? We need to. It is a ludicrous kind of way of coming together, yet it seems profound to me and important. So I hope we can find some laughter and some ways of lightening this up that people will want to come to again and again, because it is important.
That's so good. I want to emphasize that for myself too, that the lightness of it, and that memory that I brought up of the laughter. In Africa, they used to say that laughter was a sign of something really important going on. So there's a thought. We maybe we need to approach this with a lightness of being. So.
Thank you, Danny. So being present is a critical aspect of connecting, and so a foundational part of mindfulness dialogue. Clearly, it requires practice, since we participate in a world that promotes and feeds on our tendency to live in either the past or the future. So looking for simple but practical ways to apply what we learn in this program is a critical way to do this. We can practice being present in the moments that offer themselves throughout the day by simply noticing an opportunity when it arises. This is more likely to happen, though, if I decide, set an intention, to watch for such opportunities. Then we will be more likely to do what we are doing, walking, listening, tasting, noticing.
However, it can also help to have a little structure to assist the process. For example, you could set an alarm on your phone a couple of times during the day to remind you to be present for 1 minute to where you are. Then, when the alarm rings, pause. Take 3 deep breaths. Notice where I am, location, surroundings. Notice my thoughts, my feelings. As I said earlier, observe, notice, name, and let go all at once. Simply let these thoughts be, in other words, and stay with my breath for the remainder of the moment. And then finally finish with a deep breath. And let me finish with one last thought. The act of being present is, in a sense, a meditation without meditating. The stillness here, though, comes from action, breathing, attending, witnessing, releasing, and breathing again. This simple cycle can profoundly change the way that we experience our world. So enjoy being present today.
Now we come to our regular bonus segment, where we feature video clips sent in by folks in our growing community that showcase various aspects of our new global we.
Remember, we are building this community together. We all have a hand in this, so don't be shy. We invite you to share your own clips by emailing it into info@anewglobalwe.com. In the clip, make sure to tell us your name and your location along with your contribution.
Our first feature is Community Spirit. This is where we share our community mail. We will share from these regularly. Send your emails to info@anewglobalwe.com.
And our second feature is what we call Kindred Spirits. Are you a kindred spirit? Well, if you are, let us know. Show us how. Introduce yourselves with a little video. Include your name, location, and answer the question, why are you a kindred spirit? And we will show these, and perhaps we have some of them today.
Our next feature is called Spirit Moves. Have you been inspired? Do you have new insights from watching this channel? Tell us about them. Send us a clip telling us your new inspiration.
And now another one we're calling Distilled Spirits or Spirit Warriors. So tell us how you are applying mindfulness dialogue principles and practices in your local communities, in your business, in your program, in your project, even in your relationships. And perhaps today we have one or two.
Our next feature we call Free Spirits. Are you a creative? Are you an artist? Please share with us your creation, your poem, your spoken word, your visual art, your art installation, maybe a segment of a performing art. It will help us reach further on what it might mean to be a we.
Hello, my name is Lucas Smeraldo. I am a poet and playwright living in the Pacific Northwest. I am married to a lovely yoga teacher who's been teaching yoga for, I think, 15, 20 years. very committed to that. And I am a forever beginning yoga practitioner. So I have no mastery over that practice, but it does help me to remain limber and strong when I practice it regularly. I'm very excited to share a project I've been working on for 6 years called 365 Revolutions. And my intent in writing this work was to center each day with a poem, often an anthem or a call for action or for liberation, and writing that in multiple personas so that multiple identities would be centered throughout the book. And one of the pieces that I wrote was inspired by a pose called Warrior One, which is a very powerful pose. And as I put myself into that pose, I thought about my many women friends, associates, family, and the patterns that many women that I know have gone through for a long time in terms of pressure to step back and to not be at the center of conversations and policy and management and the like, to the extent that where I work at the city of Tacoma, we established a training program called Lean In, an established training program to acclimate different employees to addressing ways in which women in the workplace are marginalized and becoming aware of that and interrupting it. So the image that I'm about to share with you is based on yoga practitioners that work with a wonderful program called Native Strength Revolution. And this program prepares Native American practitioners to teach in remote locations across North America. And what you see is a wonderful practitioner that was on a yoga retreat demonstrating Warrior One. So I'm going to let the poem speak for itself. I'll invite you to feel whatever you feel in your body and think whatever you're thinking, and invite Danny and Carlos to maybe discuss this further in terms of what does the we mean? And can we be in a space together where any particular group of people claims their space fiercely, but leaves room for us all to be engaged in dialogue and conversation? And sometimes I think that many folks that have dealt with daily exclusions need a sacred space of their own in order to reclaim their strength and to heal. So I'll let the poem speak for itself beyond that. Women in all the we, in once such isolated, no standing, unplaced, centerless, cornered, no step forward. Step forward. In all we, in lunge unlocked knee, in rise one together, no only in our arms, the once no space full, and we taking our place. That's the what, and that's the we, that's coming. So I'll leave you with a thought. What does it mean to create a beloved community where the people in that circle can take their space without apology, without retreat, and remain there and be accepted on their own terms? Thank you.
Now we have another segment we're calling Spirit Rituals. Of course, ritual sounds a little kind of strange, but it's the simplest of things. I mean, shaking hands is a ritual, or having a meal or a birthday party is a ritual. So tell us about rituals you have discovered that help you make space and be more present to one another. And let's see how this evolves. This will probably take a little bit longer, but let's see.
Our next feature we're calling One in Spirit. We're seeking examples of our expanding awareness of interdependence. The example that keeps coming to mind is this movie, My Octopus Teacher. What an extreme example that is. If you have one in your local world, send it to us. We'd love to share it.
And our final little feature we're calling Spirit Child, because we want to hear from our children, our youth, kind of a special kids corner. So if one of your kids or a kid you come across clearly reflects this emerging we, because that's where our sense is that it will begin. Maybe our children already know and live out of that place of interbeing. You can see it when they play together. But maybe there's something that just jumps out. The way we see these features on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and send us in something just to show us how our children are leading the way back towards an ever new we. So there we are. We've explored, we've connected, we've discovered around being present, an aspect of mindfulness dialogue. We'll continue with this as we described at the beginning. If you'd like to, participate a little bit more, we do have a website, anewglobalwe.com. So check that out. There's lots on it, and keep in touch.
And please bring others to the party. Help this channel grow. Make sure to subscribe and tell the YouTube algorithm that you like it. And we'll keep sharing more content as the weeks go on. We'll be sharing an episode every week. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Peace.